Welcome back, everybody. So in today's episode we're going to go over the cost to actually spray and do body work on your own vehicle at home. This is going to pertain pretty directly to the Ford Escape project that I just finished. I'll throw a link to the last episode of that in the description and you guys can go through all 7 episodes if you want. Yeah, the answer might surprise you how much it actually costs to do this kind of work at home if you're going to do it properly. Let's get to it. Putting this video together was actually a little bit harder than I expected it would be. As you can see, I got a nice little cheat sheet of all my stuff here. Something to keep in mind is that a lot of my tools are professional tools. I do this for a living, so a lot of these tools I purchased to use every day. For example, snap-on ratchet and sockets. This thing was like 120 or 150 bucks. I think this little socket set was like 100 bucks. In comparison, you can buy this Stanley set at Canadian Tire for like 100 bucks on sale, and it's perfectly adequate for doing this stuff at home. Again, like my DEA is Snap-on, a lot of my things are Snap-on or Mac, and they're extremely expensive, especially for someone who's just doing things once or twice at home. So I've got 5 categories I've sort of organized everything into for this. The first one we're going to go over is our hand, air, and power tools. So 2 of the really important tools I used were a ratchet and an impact. For my ratchet, that was about $120, my Snap-on ratchet. And my impact, my Milwaukee impact, I don't know the exact price when you separate it from the kit, but I think it was about $150 for the impact alone and then a battery that goes with it. Sockets, the little sockets that I used, about $100 from Snap-on. Again, expensive. I did mention that you can go cheaper with like a Stanley set, and they're fantastic sockets. They still do the trick. Trim tools I purchased from Princess Auto. They were about $15 for the 2 set. I got the short and the long sort of crow's foot trim tools there. DA, mine is a Snap-on one. They're about $400. Very expensive, but I have been using that every day for the last 4 years with no issue. My Astro pneumatic belt sander, it was about $150. I got that on Amazon. Fantastic tool for the price. My 2 die grinders, my die grinder and angle die grinder, those are Mac tools. They're about $150 a piece. My Snap-on body hammer that I used was $120, and my 2 dollies were about $200 between the 2 of them. The last big one here was the polisher and batteries. It was about $340 for my polisher, my Milwaukee polisher, and then the 2 4-amp hour batteries that go with it. And then I just had some pick tools. I think they were $20 from Canadian Tire, and my fiber stick, they're about $5, give or take. And then just another little guy was a shim mask that I used during the polishing, and that was $25 for a 3-pack. And as I'm editing here, I realized I had missed a few things. One thing I didn't talk about was sanding blocks. Sanding blocks are obviously important and very necessary to a couple of the steps. I use a variety of sanding blocks. However, I looked online and you can get the 3M DuraBlock kit with the hook it backing for 130 bucks on Amazon. Fantastic set, I strongly recommend it. However, when you're looking to buy sanding blocks, look at your sandpaper too on what you want to use. Stick-it sandpaper has an adhesive back to it and it's a little bit cheaper, whereas the hook it stuff, it's got the Velcro back. I prefer that style. A little more expensive, but you do have to buy your blocks accordingly. And I have my little Mac Tools work light there. I think that one was $95. Expensive for a flashlight, but well worth it. The battery lasts very long and they're super durable. And that brings us to a total cost of $2,170 for our hand and power tools. Again, if you're not buying Snap-on and Mac tools, which I assume most of you aren't if you're just a DIY guy doing this at home, you can definitely cut that way down. I think you can get a DA from, or an orbital sander from Princess Auto for like 50, 60 bucks, and that'll probably last you through one job. It's not going to last you every day working like I do, but it will do the trick for doing things at home. So now we've got our second category I've organized into, and that's our shop tools and equipment. So I do have the scanner on here. I paid about $200 for the scanner, so that's the price I'm going to put down. I think new, that one's $700 or $800. Not really necessary if you're doing your own work, unless you are getting into some of the newer vehicles that do require you to clear codes and do calibrations after the fact. Then we have our welder. The welder I have can be purchased for about $800 to $1,000 new. Great little welder, nothing super fancy, definitely not a professional welder, but great for at home. The gas bottle on it was $300, and it's about $70 to fill that tank of gas. And the spool of wire, depending where you get, is usually about $80. Then my Amazon dent puller. That one, I bought it at around $325, but the price has gone up on those. They're about $425 now on Amazon when I had a look earlier today. Then I had the welding ground that I purchased to go onto that, and that was another $20. And then we have our compressor, which is a very important one. My little 20-gallon compressor was at Costco for about $350. It was definitely on the smaller end of what we needed for this job. It was struggling to keep up with my spraying. and I wouldn't want to do anything any bigger than this with a compressor that small. I am rebuilding a 60-gallon compressor with a 5 horsepower and 2-stage pump. However, we didn't use that in this video, so we're not going to factor in that kind of pricing. Next up is our wall-mounted airline kit, a 1/2-inch wall-mounted airline kit. Very important because you need that distance between your compressor and your air filters, and it's a lot easier to mount everything up when it's just stuck on your wall nice and neat. So that kit was $115. And then my water separator air dryer, I purchased that at Princess Auto for $149, and the pellets to go in that were $50. And then I have my DeVilbiss Clean Air filtration setup. That's the 3-stage with the desiccant dryer in it as well. Brand new, that costs about $1,500. Again, this is something I wouldn't expect most people to go out and buy. Even if you're going to get into this as a regular hobby, that's a very expensive setup. You can definitely get away with the cheaper air filter setup. While this is ideal, it's not super necessary, but you can get cheaper filters for the $180 to $200 range. But I was using the DeVilbiss Clean Air, so we'll put the pricing down for that on this one. Then obviously you're going to need an air hose. They're about $30 to $50 depending on what you buy. Then we had the fan and furnace filter. That I was using furnace filter on the one end of the garage, fan and furnace filter on the other to cycle my air through. I ended up buying 2 for this job, but I only used 1, so only priced out for 1. It was $50 for the fan, and then $5-6 for the 2 furnace filters. I just bought cheap ones for that. Then we have my gum wash bottle, whopping $10 for that. Spray gun holder, I think that was $15. And then my gun cleaning kit was $25. That brings us to a total of $4,373 just for the shop tools and bigger equipment. That's a lot of money to invest. However, if you're doing this over a long period of time, you plan to do it either a lot for yourself or do side jobs, it is going to eventually pay itself off. Our third category here is going to be consumables and materials. This is a tough one, simply because I buy a lot of my consumables in bulk, simply because I'll be using these on future projects, whether for myself or for side jobs for customers. So when I buy sandpaper, I buy it by the box. You can buy individual sheets at some auto body supply stores, which is definitely the cheaper way to go if you're only going to be doing one thing, one job. Because in my case, consult my cheat sheet here, because in my case I used 40, 80, 180, 320, 400, 600, and 800 for my normal sandpapers. And to buy a box of those, it's anywhere from $62 to $70 for a box. I think I averaged $66 on here, which is just $462 alone in sandpaper. Then we had our filler board, $30. Scotch pads, we had both the gray and the red. Again, guys, I only use like 1 or 2 out of these boxes, but the boxes are $25 each, so that's $50 there. Alright, then we had our wax and grease remover, the Proform stuff. It's a very aggressive one, so I didn't want to use that for my actual like pre-paint wax and grease remover, but for cleaning the panel it was great. That's about $30 for a gallon. Then we used the Sikkens M600. That stuff's about $100 a gallon, and I think I did mention in the video I borrowed a little bit of that from my coworker, my old coworker Cam, because again, it's super expensive. I only needed a tiny little bit, so luckily knowing people in the industry who have these products that you can share and borrow or shoot a few bucks to them, definitely helpful than buying the full gallon if you need it. But we'll throw that on there because if you didn't have a buddy in the industry or whatever, you're still going to need to purchase that to use it. And then gum wash. A 5-gallon pail of gum wash is about $70 to $80. No, we're not going to go through nearly all of that, maybe a pint or 2, but we'll throw it on the list. The DeVilbiss wipes that I use is a very final wash. Those acetone alcohol wipes, they're about $40 for a package, give or take. Definitely worth it. They're awesome as a final wash. I've never had issues, very rarely had issues with streaking or any contaminants being left on the panel after using those. And then my specialty top pack cloths, Torque top pack cloths. The ones that I was using, the blue cloths, they're a higher end one. It's like $25 for a package of those, but they're fantastic. They're low lint. They barely tear even if you try to tear them, so they're awesome to use, just expensive. And then tack cloth, usually you can buy them in bulk. I was just using an old one, so we'll just say $5 for the tack cloth. Roll of poly, very important, about $60 for a roll of poly. You're not going to go through a whole thing on one job, but they are necessary. Then we had our 18-inch paper. It's about $50 for an 18-inch roll of paper. I think they're like 750 feet, so they do stretch a long way. You're not going to use one in one job. Same thing for the 36-inch paper. It was about $80 for that 36-inch paper I was using, and again, goes a long way. Masking tape, I think I used 3 rolls of that 1.5-inch masking tape, and those are about $7 a piece, so that's $21. Then we have our filler. That gallon of 3M Platinum Plus filler was $60, and that came with the hardener as well, so you don't need to worry about purchasing that separately. Glaze, our dolphin putty there was $25. Cavity wax, $35, and it was about $30 for the wands. However, those wands are reusable. And then we'll get into our mixing cups. I think I use 4 mixing cups. They're anywhere from $1 to $2 each, so we'll say $8 for the mixing cups. Paint filters, about $3 for the filters I had to use. Razors, it's about $10 for a pack of 100. Those go a long way. So we had our Roloc orange strip disc. Those are like anywhere from 10 to 15 bucks a disc if you're buying them by the disc. You can't buy boxes. I only have one though, so we'll just say 10 bucks for that guy. And then we have our 50 grit Roloc disc that I was just using to knock down the heads of any of the studs that I pulled, or spots that I pulled on the quarter panel, and it's about $5 for one of those discs. Then we had our polish. The polish that I use, the 3M Perfect It stuff, awesome stuff. It's about $70 for one of those quart bottles that I was using. So we had 2 of those for the stage 1 and the stage 2, so that's $140. It's about $40 for the set of the 4 pads. We only used 3 in my videos that I made, but yeah, so you buy those for $40. Then we had our paint and primer, obviously. So the primer with hardener was about $130 for the mixable gallon and a bit. We didn't go through nearly that. I think we went through a pint and a half, maybe 2 pints after having to reprime the one spot on the quarter. So $130 there. Then we had our base coat and our mid coat. So I sprayed Sikkens. Sikkens is on the very top end of price point for paints. It's not cheap stuff. However, I went with that because I knew it was going to give me a good match. I've sprayed it a ton in the past. I'm familiar with the product. The only issue I have is coverage, which you probably saw if you watched my video of actually doing the painting. So my base coat was $185. My mid coat was $107, and I bought just a pint of each of those. And then the activator was $15. And then for my clear coat, I went with the Axo Nobel Imperium Euro Performance 2K clear coat. And that stuff was $180 for the gallon of clear, and then $110 just for the 1 quart of hardener. However, I will need to buy a 2nd quart of hardener if I want to use that complete gallon because it is a 2-to-1 mix ratio. So between those two, that's $290. Editing Phil back here because I realized I missed a couple things there. The 3M Trizact discs I used, the 1500 and the 3000, they're quite expensive at $100 a box, and you don't get a ton of them in there. However, they do go quite a long ways. You can use one for multiple, like 1 sheet of paper for multiple jobs if you're just like spot polishing and whatnot. So it's an expensive cost to eat up front, but it will last you quite a long time. So that brings us to a grand total of $2,316 for our materials and consumables. Like I said, guys, that's going to go a long way for me, though. The only thing I really used up, I think, was the base coat. Everything else, I still got a ton left material-wise for future jobs and whatnot. Alright guys, so for our 4th category, we have just our personal protective equipment. Respirator, the 3M respirator is about $35. For the organic filters, that's $22 for a set of those. And then for our pre-filters, it's $30 for a 10-pack. Unfortunately, you can only buy them in the 10-pack, so that's what I've got on here. Nitrile gloves, those Raven nitrile gloves are $45 for a pack. That cost has skyrocketed since the beginning of COVID. I feel like they were like 20 or 30 bucks before all this, but they've been in very short supply, so super high demand. It's what I use at my last shop. I love them for painting, doing body work, because you can still feel what's going on, but they're still fairly durable. And then we've got our paint suit. In this case, I was using a free suit that I got from a paint course a while back. However, paint suits can range anywhere from like $25 for a Tyvek suit up to like $200 for a fancier saddle one that's reusable, washable, all that jazz. You can definitely get away with cheaper Tyvek ones for stuff like this. We'll just put $50 down. That's sort of an in-between figure. Safety glasses. We obviously don't want to be getting anything in our eyes while we're spraying or doing our grinding. Let's put down 10 bucks for safety glasses. I know they can range. They can be cheaper or more expensive, but 10 bucks pretty middle of the line. And last thing on this list is a welding helmet. My helmet that I was wearing in this video is about $200. It's sort of a middle of the line hobbyist helmet. Definitely not a professional hood, but definitely does the trick for this kind of work. That brings us to a total of $352 for our personal protective equipment. And our last category, guys, let's talk about spray guns. So, I was actually really torn on where to approach this one. So, let's get this one out of the way first. Our primer gun. I used a cheap Princess Auto gun with a large tip. It's an HVLP. I think it had a 1.8 or a 2.0 tip, somewhere in that range. And it was like $50 on sale. Super cheap, but does the trick. And onto my base and clear guns. So these are 2 of the most expensive guns on the market. I just like fancy things, so I like overspending for things. No, actually, I got really good deals on mine. My SATA 5500 I bought through a program at our local trade school for students. I got a wicked deal on that. And then my 5000 phaser I bought used on Kijiji and got a wicked deal on that one. I'd strongly recommend, if you can, buying a professional gun used over buying a cheap Harbor Freight or Princess Auto spray gun for your actual clear and base guns. You'll get a way better gun as long as it's been decently maintained versus trying to spend like $100 on a gun that's not going to perform. You're better off spending a few $100s on a used professional gun. A lot of guys do sell their old guns when they upgrade, and it's a great way to go. So as for pricing on these guns, the list price for a SATA 5500 phaser is $1,900 from SATA. To buy the SATA Atom that I have on that, that's another $500 from SATA. That's $2,400 for one spray gun. That being said, I don't know anyone inside or outside of the industry who's actually paid SATA's list price. You can even find them cheaper online from big auto body supply companies, things like that, for like $1,400, $1,500 for the gun. So that being said, I got wicked deals online. For the sake of this video, let's just say I spent $1,000 on each one of those guns, bring us to a total cost of $2,050 for spray guns. I know that was a little long-winded, guys. That actually ended up being a little bit longer than I expected it to be. However, there's a lot of little things that go into it to be able to do a job from start to finish, doing the body and paint work, as you saw. So that brings us to a grand total of $11,261. That is hefty. Let's take the spray guns out of that though. That brings us to $9,211. The reason I want to separate those is because spray guns can vary so drastically in what you buy. You might get a SATA 3000 or something, which are fantastic guns. You might get one for $200 or $300 off another painter and be able to use that for both your base and your clear. You don't necessarily need separate guns for base and clear. In my case, I find the HVLP guns from SATA spray the base coat, the waterborne base coat, a little bit nicer than the RP guns, which spray the clear coat fantastically. So that's just something I like doing. I like having separate guns for the two. However, you don't necessarily need that at home. And let's talk about the cost here. You don't necessarily need to spend that much money to paint a car in your garage. As you saw, I bought a lot of materials that you wouldn't necessarily need if you're just doing a single job. You can buy smaller amounts of certain things. There are things you won't get away with. Clear coat generally, if you're buying a quality clear coat anyway, you have to buy at least a gallon of it. Usually it ends up being like 1.5 gallons sprayable after you buy the hardener as well. And then like when you're buying filler, you buy it by the gallon. So there's a lot of areas you can't really cut costs, but some areas you might be able to as well. And if you're just doing a paint job, you're not going to need the welder, you're not going to need the stud puller. You could cut a couple $1,000s out of the cost right there as well. So like in the grand scheme of things, I'm just trying to give you guys a rough baseline of what it will cost to set up your garage and do a single job kind of thing. Just that starting cost is high. However, if you're looking to get into this, if you're a car enthusiast, if you just want to be able to paint your own car, totally worth the investment. The feeling of being able to see your car after you've done a fresh paint job on it, it's a great feeling, and just be able to say to your friends and other car enthusiasts like, hey, yeah, I did that. It's just awesome. So hence why I'm making these videos. I want to help people out who want to learn how to do this themselves. I know there's a lot of resources online towards the stuff, but just having that little bit more information out there might help someone out, and that's what I'm going for. I know I did sound in my earlier videos a little bit negative towards people doing this at home, and it's not so much doing it at home, it's the people who expect they're going to save a lot of money by trying to do this themselves. And I'm not necessarily negative towards it, it's just people don't understand the cost that goes into it. Like in the case of my neighbor, they damaged the corner of their vehicle, and that's something where you won't recoup the costs of spending all this money on equipment and tooling to fix one job that might be a few $1,000s at a body shop. And same thing, I see that a lot online, people saying like, hey, will this be cheaper to just do it myself? The usual answer is no. It's often not going to save you money if you're just doing one job, or even maybe two jobs at home. If it's something you want to pursue long run, definitely worth the investment. Otherwise, you're better off just going to a body shop. Another thing with bringing to a body shop, you don't have to deal with any mistakes. Say you get a whole bunch of fisheyes in your job and the whole thing needs to be resprayed. That's going to cost you, if you have to redo your base and clear, that might cost you another $1,000, $1,500. Who knows? If you just have to respray your clear even, say it's a little bit too dry, you have to sand it all down, you're not going to have enough mill thickness once you polish it, then you're going to have to respray your clear. That could be $200 or $300, maybe a little bit more for that extra gallon of clear you're going to need. So just things to keep in mind. Your first paint job, it's not going to come out great. I definitely struggled in my first couple years of spraying. While they always ended up okay, there was a lot of polishing involved. I became a way better polisher before I became a half-decent painter. And I think that brings us to the end of the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit that like button, and for my future videos, please hit that subscribe. Thank you so much for viewing. We'll see you next time.